Hey there, Michael Church, Crawl Space Ninja. Today we got an Ask a Ninja question from Nathan in Wichita, Kansas. And basically what he's saying is that he's got some mold growing on the floor of his crawl space. Okay, so he's got mold, he's got a dirt crawl space. There's obviously mold growing on that dirt crawl space. And what he wants to know is, said it looks white and fluffy, and he was wondering if putting down our vapor barrier is a good idea. Just go ahead and lay the plastic over the white fluffy mold, or should he treat it first and then lay the vapor barrier over the white fluffy mold? And he also was asking about ventilation. So this is a good topic that I feel like we should cover, so stay tuned. Okay, so in order to explain this topic a little better, I'm going to use a couple different websites to go over a few things. And the first one that I found was Inspectopedia. I apologize. Inspectopedia. It's a free encyclopedia of building and environmental inspections, testing, diagnostics, and repair. So it's Inspectopedia.com. So when I did a search on Google about mold on dirt crawl spaces and should you be concerned about that, this was one of the first websites that came up. And as you can see here, it's a bit of a dated site, but they do have some pictures of mold growing on the dirt of crawl spaces. So let's take a look at this. This typically happens in a crawl space that doesn't have vapor barrier down and has a lot of sticks and even we've seen sewage leaks and things like that in crawl spaces. If you've got a critter infested crawl space with a lot of poop and feces, even you got cats, different things like that going in and defecating all over the soil, this kind of stuff can happen. Even a gray water problem. Maybe you've got a washer leak down in there. Bacterias and molds and things like that can grow in the soil of crawl spaces. But I want to caution you a little bit. All soil is wet and has the ability to grow mold. Okay, so don't let this alarm you too much that there's mold, fungus, whatever you want to call it, growing in the soil under your house. It's always going to be there. Whether you have a slab or vapor barrier or whatever, you're always going to have some form of fungus in the soil of the crawl space. It's for some reason, whenever people encapsulate their crawl space, they feel like laying the plastic down on the ground somehow dries out the soil under it. That is impossible. Okay, you're always going to have moist soil under your crawl space, which is what the vapor barrier, it's a vapor barrier, which is what the intention is of the plastic, is to keep the moisture or to slow the moisture from evaporating into the crawl space. That's why you can't just put in a dehumidifier. Okay, it's a mixture of dehumidification with proper vapor barrier to help control humidity, not stop it. It's never going to stop. The soil's always going to be wet. So let's go into what Inspectopedia says about this. I just want to show this to you. So mold on dirt and crawl space. 5 steps to fix a dirt area mold problem. All right, so let's scroll on down here. Obviously, I've seen this. I've seen mushrooms growing in crawl spaces. Okay, it's possible. Mushrooms are basically the fruiting body of mold. Okay, so you're going to have it. So here's what they say: what to do about mold on dirt under a building. 5 steps. Number 1, remove the obvious heavy fungal or mold growth from the dirt space. I agree. If you've got something like this where this person's got this much stuff, chances are it's not necessarily the fungus, it's what it's growing on. There may be heavy dead wood debris down there, or as I mentioned, fecal matter or different things like that. It would be a good idea to get any obvious mold food out of the crawl space. But this could be some kind of old gray water leak or something like that. And what are you going to do? Treat it as a chemical soil spill and excavate all the excavate all the soil out and put good soil in? I mean, that just seems like a lot of work to me. But if you could take away some of this heavy fungus and bag it up and get it out of the crawl space, I think that's a good idea. The second thing is to inspect and clean off and remove mold from other surfaces in the same area. Absolutely, that is true. You should, I assume they're talking about floor joists. If you've got insulation that's growing mold, even if it's on the ground, as I mentioned before, cardboard it can grow mold and different things like that. Dry out the space, the dirt floor area, and stop the water or moisture sources. Okay, I agree with the second part. Stop the water or moisture sources to a degree. Okay, if your crawl space is taking on water, okay, so in other words, if the foundation is flooding, okay, obviously an interior French drain leading to a sump pump is a great way to control moisture, but you're not going to stop water from percolating up from under your house. It's impossible to do that. You can't, okay, do that. All right, so, and it says to dry out the floor. Again, kind of impossible. Now, if you've experienced a drought in the past few years or few months, then chances are your soil's dry. But it's, you know, this is impossible to completely dry out the floor of the crawl space. All right, install a 6 mil or heavier poly plastic vapor barrier over the dirt surface. Agree with that. And then check for rot or insect damage in the area. First of all, I would swap those two. I would check for rot or insect damage, as I mentioned before, first, get rid of dead woods and things like that, then put plastic over the dirt. Now, I wanted to bring up a second opinion, okay, to this Inspectopedia article, and that is the people over at Green Building Advisor. And I want to read this. This was a Q&A, a community Q&A, and this gentleman, Mike, posted this question back in 2016. On a project we're doing, the homeowner is very reluctant to encapsulate the crawl space because he believes the mold will grow on the ground side of the vapor barrier and spores will end up migrating into the house. Okay, valid concern. We both know that having a completely airtight ground barrier is impossible, so slight infiltration is expected. Okay, I've been saying that. This article was written in 2016. These radon-proof vapor barriers, that right there shows you that they cannot be effective because, like this gentleman is saying, airtight ground barrier is impossible. Okay, so let's move on. Just wanted to throw that out there. Has anyone documented this problem occurring? He wants to close the vents, install a loose-fitting vapor barrier, and a dehumidifier. The original builder put fiberglass bat perpendicular to the joist and then laid the sheeting on top of that. With that situation, I can't use the argument about bats not staying put in the crawl. He believes that this it has performed well, so reluctant to change. Okay, so I just want to mention that last part I'm not really concerned about, the batting installation. That's not what this video is all about. But let's go back, let's scroll down here, and this is Martin Holliday. He is a Green Building Advisor editor, and this is what he wrote to Mike. I'm not sure whether any discussion that I have with you will convince the homeowner to make the changes to the crawl space. In general, it's a good idea to use a black polyethylene, not a clear polyethylene, to cover the dirt from the crawl space. So why does he want to use a black and not a clear? It's so the homeowner can't see what's under the crawl space. That way the homeowner can't see through the polyethylene to see what's underneath, right? Because all that does is create problems. If you put a clear plastic down on the earth, all right, you will see moisture under it. You'll see beads of water. You'll see condensation. You'll see roots and growth and all this other stuff underneath there, which is why most people in the encapsulation business uses either black or white or some form of polyethylene or plastic to cover the dirt so that you don't see it, okay? The fact is, even without any poly, the soil is damp. What I just said. It is probably It probably already includes mold spores, although you may not be able to see them. In many crawl spaces that I've visited, the soil also includes cat feces and raccoon feces. So the situation will certainly be improved by installing polyethylene. What's going on under the poly? Who cares? Don't look. Under the poly is the same nasty, damp, moldy soil that was already there. Remember, the reason the crawl space floor needs plastic is because the soil is nasty, damp, and moldy. So Nathan in Wichita, Kansas, I hope that answers the question for you. Basically, if you can remove that ugly white mold that you had underneath there and it's not that big of a deal, then get rid of it. Otherwise, just throw plastic over it, dehumidify the space. If you got any kind of mold on the floor joists and things like that, kill that mold. But it's virtually impossible, and the expectation is impossible to achieve, to create a soil that is mold-free and also moisture-free. So my name is Michael Church with Crawl Space Ninja. Appreciate you watching this video, and we hope you make it a happy and blessed day. We'll see you later.